So this is 2012's Conics question B1. So Conics basically means anything that's either an ellipse, a parabola, or a hyperbola. They often ask something a little bit different in terms of something like a centre of curvature, or in this case they ask a little bit about focal points and stuff like this. But you'll see a little bit more about it as we go along. So this is just one of the ones that came up. This is 2012. It won't fit on the page as is. So if I drew the elevation here and the end view here, it wouldn't fit. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw it on a new blank page. So we're going to put this to one side, and we're going to start off by drawing out the basics. So the first thing I suppose is we don't know where exactly the top of it is. Now if we were to do the centre of curvature, that may come down below, but we're not going to cover that in this video, so I'm not going to be too worried about it. So I'm going to draw a ground line towards the bottom of the page. Okay, so draw a heavy ground line. Okay, as I said, we're not worried about centre curvature, so you won't worry about that for this video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with our distances. So the scale is 1:100, so that basically means 3 meters would be 30 millimeters or 3 centimeters, depending on which way we want to call it out. So I'm going to take my set square and we start to mark out the various distances. So I'm just going to come in, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 from the thing. I don't think it's massively big. And I might use my longer set square. Yeah, make it a bit easier. So we're going to mark out our 18 meters. Okay, and if we want, we could mark our 3 and leave our 12 gap and our 15. So we don't know our height as of yet, and also we just want to watch this part here, right? In other words, we have to leave a gap between the two, but that's going to be sort of needed to be put in as well. In other words, sort of it's a cut off bit of a cylinder on its edge, and you'll see that basically what we're drawing is the convention centre in Dublin. Okay, so down along the quays. So because of this, we want to leave a fairly sizable gap. Okay, so we're thinking, let's see, we actually don't know the size of the rectangle either. So let's see, I'm just going to look at what this looks to be to leave, to give a good estimate. So I suppose if I look there, this is a good way of doing an estimate. 1 centimetre is 3 meters on this. So if I say, well, that's over 1, it's nearly over 2. Okay, it is pretty much is over 2, right? So that'll be 60 millimeters. So we just go a little bit further. We'll go 65 or 70 millimeters. So what I'm starting with here is this triangle point here. So we know that's 30 degrees. And we know it goes up until it gets to be 3 meters high. I'm going to put a point 3 meters high. And I'm going to bring that over to meters. Okay, so what I did was I came over 6. This is basically going to be the edge of my building. I suppose maybe if I draw it up, even though I don't know the height at the minute. So this is basically my 18 meters between here and there. I then measured out, I came over about 65 or 70 from there to there. That was the bottom of the triangle. I got my 30 degrees here, and what I did was I measured up 30 millimeters, put a little mark here, drew it across to meet it, and now what I have is basically that triangle drawn in. Okay, so we do know that 2 meters is needed for something and 1.5 meters is needed for something, right? If we want, they're shown on the drawing, so we can draw them on as well if we want. Okay, but the main thing we want to know basically is the block goes back at 60 degrees. Now maybe what I'll do is I'll heavy in that triangle because that's completed. Okay. Okay, so that's the triangle at the front of the convention centre. Basically this will be a glass sort of facade that you can walk into. So we know that if we come back at 60 degrees this way, it's going to be needed. And if we come back at 60 degrees this way, it's going to be needed. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult when you look at these questions to see, right, what exactly did line up? And if you carefully look here, what you'll see is what lined up was that if I draw a line straight up to that, that basically gives the top of this. If we read the structure or the question, it says that it's a right cylinder. So this is basically a cylinder, right? You can sort of see it there, but it's not straight down, it's tilted at an angle. Okay, so if I bring this up here to meet this, I now have that line drawn, and now I know the height of my building. But I also know that if I come back 30 degrees this way, I have the far side. Okay, so let's see, maybe if I put that there, might allow me to zoom in a little bit closer. for the question. Yeah, that looks pretty okay. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I have my right cylinder, and we know that this doesn't come out the full way, so there must be something that lines up. So what lines up now, I just have to move that back down a little bit just to get this bit, is if I draw that up there, that gives me the far side of the rectangle. Okay, a little bit of working out on that. Okay, hopefully we'll become a bit more obvious when I heavy it. So that was the line brought up to that. Wherever that hit my 6-degree line on that side, allowed me to draw this line. Wherever this line, the 2 meters in, wherever that came back to hit that, gave me this line, but also gave me the height for the main part of the building. So I can actually pretty much heavy in the end view at this stage. So I'm hoping that I'm finished with this. I know that's pretty okay in terms of zoomed in on the screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, don't forget these lines here that they have sort of in the pink may be of use. Whether they're useful for constructing this or whether they're actually meant to be part of some type of structure that's supporting this, I'd always put them in. Okay, you may look at them and say, oh, they're not really needed, but there may be marks for them. So I'm going to do a slightly darker, that purple might be a little bit too dark. Let me just see if I have. Sorry, so I'll use maybe this one. Might look a bit better. So they drew one line from here. They drew one line from here. And they drew this line here. And I think the bottom ones are red. I've sort of sketched that one, so I can't see, but I think that's correct. Okay, so just to make sure, definitely make sure you have them two drawn in, because you may not have had them drawn in. Even if you can draw them in as a different color, draw them in as light. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the basics of that in order to draw the main construction of my building. So I'm going to start with this outline here. So that allows me to draw my two uprights, and we don't know the across distance yet. No, okay. So that's pretty much where we're at the minute. And we have point A and we have point C. So we label them. Okay, there is a few other points that I could get, but I'm just going to start from the bottom. So the first thing we want to know is, well, where's the middle of that? So obviously that must be 60 millimeters in. If we want to be perfectly accurate, we could bisect it. But because this was set up at 12, we should be happy enough that that's that. Okay, so an ellipse can be constructed by a number of methods, but the easiest way to construct it is generally to use the circles method for making concentric. So we know that this is point B, because this ellipse shape here, basically the edge of the parabola or the edge of the cylinder, is going to be constructed basically as the front entrance of sort of this bar here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my compass, I'm going to set it to my major and my minor, and we're just going to construct that out. Okay, as we would to construct any ellipse. Okay, so we're happy enough with that, and we have a small thinner colour. Maybe just use the red. So we'll draw our construction for our ellipse. So okay, so I'm going to leave them straight down. Not far enough. Okay, and I'm happy that I have my ellipse there in plan. So let's move that over a little bit. Okay, so that's my base of my structure done. Okay, so what they asked me then is basically they show me that then the other upright part is basically an upright cut through this, so it would also give an ellipse or a semi-ellipse. So basically what I'm going to have to do in that case is I'm going to have to do the same kind of construction, but in this case the top of the ellipse is up here. So if I bring this point up and I bring this across to me, this now is my major axis and this is my minor axis. So what was the major axis in the last one is now the minor axis. So what I'm going to do is maybe I'll use a different color and I'll actually just go back over the yellow that I used in this one just to signify which one is which, but it may change color because of I'm drawing over yellow on this one, but hopefully because yellow is light it should be okay. So we'll extend this up here. Okay, so one thing I didn't think about was just in terms of how much space you might need here. So I'm just trying to move that over a small bit. So when you are coming in, make sure that you come in about 30 millimeters there, just to give yourself a bit of space. Okay, so that's that. So I'll do the same thing, the same angles that I'm going to use, but I'm going to draw them out in an orange maybe. Okay, now in this case, the ellipse is going the opposite way. So if you look at this one here, it's like an egg that was lying flat on the table. But in this case, it's like an egg that was sitting in an egg cup. So instead of going down from the bigger circle and out from the smaller circle, we're going to go the opposite. And I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. But what I should really do is just mark where I want to finish up, because that will give me a good idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, let's see, this sort of luminous green, and I'm going to draw two potential answers. Alright, so there's a potential answer and here's a potential answer. Now if I looked at them, it's not really conclusive which one is right, so it could be that one and it could be that one. But if I try to draw it on this side, it's fairly obvious which is right. I have to come down as far as A. So in that case, it must be the upper side that's correct. Okay, so it must be that one. It couldn't swing out to there. So therefore it must be the upper one on this one as well. And that's sort of what I was saying is the opposite. But some people ask me, they said, do you learn a method for that? And I don't. I probably shouldn't have that in because it's going to be light. But anyways, so what I always just draw this out, and once I figure out which one is wrong, then I know which side is right. So again, in this case, it has to be up from this one and across from this one. And the same here, up from this one. So I didn't bother drawing out both potential solutions there in that case. I just drew out one. Okay. So my top looks a bit pointy, but and again this bit here shouldn't be heavy. Okay, but there's, I think it's a bit pointy more on this side. So there's basically my construction done out. So what I mean by the other side is basically this point and this point would have been used if I was coming this way, if the egg, as I said, was on its side. So I now get heavy in this line and this line. And the last thing it does is basically it shows me this. Now I'm just going to see what exactly this say here. It says the convention centre shown in the image is a landmark building in Dublin. It's stunning design, that's just context. Figure B1 shows the elevation energy of the structure, consists of a portion of right cylinder with an axis at 60 degrees to the horizontal plane. Horizontal plane just means ground, as shown in the end view. The cylinder intersects the vertical front planes, producing elliptical curves. Okay, so it doesn't tell me that this is a translation, but basically there's two methods of which I can do this. This curve here, i.e. when this is cut, would be exactly the same as this. The only difference is obviously this has been cut off because it doesn't, we don't see the full of it. So there's two potential ways you could do it. The first way you could do it is you could just bring this over and you could reconstruct this ellipse here. That distance there is the same as that. You could draw it, you could heavy in your ellipse, and everything would be exactly the same. The only difference would be this here wouldn't be heavied on this side. So you could do that. The other way, which is probably a quicker way, is by using the translation method. Basically, this curve here is exactly the same here. And again, as I said, the only difference is some of it will come down further. So what I know is that if I take that distance there and I step up this point the exact same distance, or maybe I shouldn't use the blue because I've already used that blue. I'll use the pink. That's where that curve would be. So again, I'll just set my compass just make sure I mark it. Okay, so I'll mark that. If I bring that up to meet it, that's where that point for the ellipse will be. If I bring up this one, that's where this point will be. Let's make sure. Yeah. And if I want to bring up this one, that's where that won't be. But as I said, that's going down below it. And I do the same on the other side. So I'll take this distance here. I'll take this distance here. There's no harm in me drawing up this one here. Okay, so what I'll do now is I've found my points. Hopefully you can see them there. I'm going to sketch it in. I may as well continue. Well, maybe I'll use this pattern. Okay, but this bit here would be the bit that's heavy. Okay, so my bit there shouldn't be heavy. Okay, I shouldn't really have used the dark colour. But that's the question complete for the main part. Part C asks to get a centre of curvature, which we're not going to cover in this, but it does ask to get focal points. So hopefully from junior cert you'll remember how to get focal points. The way to get your focal point is you put your major axis, or set your compass to your major axis. Put it on top of the minor axis and strike it. That's one focal point on the left hand side. That's a focal point on the right hand side. And that's the question there completed.